Hello, and welcome to the season 2 of the Working Mom Homeschooling podcast, the podcast for workingmomhomeschooling.com, where our mission is to help homeschooling parents make money, maybe even have a career, while continuing to homeschool and without losing their sanity. My name is Julie, and I'm your host and resident career coach today. I want to thank you all for joining us and listening in. I hope you're doing well. Today's episode I've entitled, Let Your Kids Fail. And so we're going to jump in that really quickly. So I was on Facebook, as I invariably am, and I noticed in one of my Facebook groups, and this has become a common theme, is I'm hearing a lot of messages from parents talking about issues with their children. And the current one, and the most recent one that I was kind of looking at today was, my 12-year-old won't do his schoolwork. Well, I see this kind of question a lot, and I know that I've dealt with it in my own family, and I thought that would be a good subject for today's podcast, is when you have a kind of, let's say, behavioral issue or situation with your kids. Because with our working mom homeschooling parent world, well, we're still parenting kids. They're not, short adults, they are children. And this, behavioral issues are going to come up, whether you're a working parent with a public school kid, or you're a homeschooling parent, or you are a working mom homeschooling parent. They are going to happen. So I wanted to kind of bring that up. So first of all, this is kind of my own parenting philosophy, and I am definitely not putting myself out there for any reason to, as a parenting expert, because I am not. I am a flat out hot mess parenting, just like the rest of us are. And I just kind of roll with it. But I will say, when I first started homeschooling, when my oldest had just hit 5, and I went to a homeschool conference for the very, very first time, one of the speakers there was discussing a book called Shepherding a Child's Heart. Now, this is a religious-based book. It is a Christian-based book for any of my listeners who are not. However, I recommend this book anyway. And it definitely comes to it from a Christian, kind of theme and tone. And for those of my listeners who are Christian, you'll love this book. But there are some themes and some concepts and some parenting lessons in here, frankly, that I think go far beyond that. And so I do think any of my listeners who do not prescribe to that faith will participate and enjoy it as well. I was listening to this, and I really just almost kind of changed my life when it comes to my own parenting philosophy. First of all, the concept behind shepherding a child's heart is you can parent their external behavior all you want. You can force them to behave, but that doesn't change their internal heart. And that doesn't change how their inside of them at all, their character, their heart, their beliefs, their faith, whatever. And so you can do everything you want to their outside, but that doesn't mean anything on the inside is going to change. However, really, in order for that change to mean something to that child, they have to be changed internally first, and then that will show on the external. So, and I grew up in a super old school, conservative environment. My parents were hyper old school. And I really do get that, because frankly, that's how they were raised, and that's how they raised us. You behave on the outside. You can think whatever you want on the inside, but on the outside, you're going to behave. And then frankly, I think the idea is this: if you control the outside, then the inside will change eventually along with it. But they didn't, that's how they were raised, and that's what they did, because that's what they knew. And I think that's really when that wasn't working for me and for my kids, and I just felt like there was something not clicking for me. When I heard this message, I was like, that's it. That's what I've been trying to explain or figure out or cope with or kind of make that own change to my own parenting life. That was it, is that instead of focusing so much on the outside behavior, and by the way, I do make my kids behave in public, okay? However, but only focusing on that is not changing anything on the inside. and long-term ramifications, what I really want for my child and what I really want for my girls is that change of heart, and that, I want their insides changed because everything flows from that, correct? So that's really kind of, it was just emotionally important for me that day. And I think that one kind of concept has absolutely changed how I parent. So I love that book. Um, so the specific situation we're kind of discussing today is when your kid doesn't get on board. But we're going to talk about this specifically in relation to the homeschool work, okay? Because when we're working while homeschooling, we're already doing, frankly, double duty. We don't have time. And frankly, if the kids aren't on board and the kids aren't cooperating and the kids aren't doing their part, it makes this working while homeschooling life so much harder. If I can't expect my kids to be doing their schoolwork while I'm recording a podcast or talking to a client or writing a report that I was having to write yesterday, if they're not cooperating, then that's less time I can work, which means it's less money that I make, and so on and so on. And so I think we almost have to really do our parenting very efficiently. And so I can nag, I can browbeat them, I can kind of smack them over the head with a stick, but that's not going to change their heart. And that means I'm just going to be coming up against this brick wall over and over and over again. That's not fun for anybody. So when I look beyond the behavior, I find that things fall into about 4 categories. Okay. Number 1 is a physical thing. And this goes back to when they're toddlers, guys, especially in the preteen stage that I'm in right now. I have to remember their body, their mind, their emotions, their hormones, there's so much is going on. It's like their body is internally is on fire. So when their body is flooded or on fire, it's not like they can really deal with a lot of complicated stuff. Okay. We can't over explain because they can't cope with that in the preteen stage. So it's almost like I'm talking to my toddlers again. Okay. With maybe a little bit stronger vocabulary. At least it feels like that some days. So I will say that I have to give very short, very clear, very concise direction. And I find that what actually has worked for me, and I've tried a lot of different things, is very clear if then consequence behavior. If this, then that. And it should be that the consequences fit the crime. Okay, it should be a natural consequence. One of my friends with older kids kind of just said that phrase to me, and it made so much sense. So what would be a natural consequence of your kid not doing their work? Well, in public school, they would fail, right? If they were doing just enough to get by, okay, like my preteens have done, if they were kind of skimming along, that at some point that's going to catch up with them. And we should let it catch up with them, and we should let them feel the full consequences of their behavior. So if we're talking about those 4 things, okay, the first one is physical issues. Are they about to get sick? I find that my kids' behavior the day before they get sick, okay, goes bonkers. If you remember when your kid was teething, the day before the kids came out, they were either running a fever or my kids, frankly, went postal. They were crazy. So it's right before they get sick. Are you about to come down with something? Have you eaten lately? Are you sleeping enough? I know with my oldest, who is 13 now, I can tell you the days that we're having hormonal issues, or she decided to stay up late in bed and not sleep till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I can straight up tell you those days because tempers are shorter and her ability to handle emotions is shorter. And doesn't that happen to us as parents as well? I mean, we moms, we know that when we're going through that and we've had lack of sleep, our ability to kind of cope with stuff is cut off. And well, why wouldn't a 12 or 13-year-old be dealing with that too? And they have many less coping skills than we do now as adults, right? So why wouldn't it be difficult for them too? So the first thing I'm looking for is physical. Now, if I get past that and it's nothing like that, then I'm going to look for am I asking them to do something that is beyond their capabilities? Am I asking them as a parent? Maybe I am asking too much. Am I asking them to do something or to do so much that is beyond their current physical and mental maturity level? Okay, I wouldn't ask a 4-year-old to be able to drive a car safely. That would just be ridiculous, right? Well, sometimes that 13-year-old, even though she might be acting the most mature for her age group, and she might be the most mature, responsible kid, if you start asking a 13-year-old to handle 18 or 19 or 20-year-old maturity level things, frankly, maybe they can't. And oftentimes I will see a lot of pushback when I've asked for something that isn't just in their capabilities right now. So, and again, do you see, so they might be pushing back. That might be sass, that might be avoidance, that might be reluctance or bad attitude while we do it, or this, that, and the other. But again, remember, her brain is still forming. Kids' brains are still forming until 18 to 22, right? Depending on if they're male or female. So even with that, if their brain isn't fully formed yet, I can't expect them to reason like a 40-something-year-old adult like I am, okay? So I have to kind of give a little bit of slack sometimes, or I have to say, you know what? I think we've bitten off more than we can chew. We need to step back, okay? So if we get beyond their capability level as far as physical and mental capabilities at an appropriate level, I might also ask, honestly, and this might go more into the physical issue as well, is am I dealing with a kind of an age-appropriate behavior issue? So no one is surprised when a 3-year-old throws a tantrum, right? That's a normal age-appropriate issue for you to be dealing with. Well, with 13 and 12 and 13-year-olds and preteens, that's a normal age-appropriate thing to be dealing with too, right? So we shouldn't be surprised when it happens, but we want to look and see, well, why? Why is that happening? So if it's not a physical issue, if it's not because, frankly, they are completely and totally overwhelmed because we've asked too much, they're fully kind of like just filled up to their capacity, then we need to go into the educational issue. Sometimes it's not the fact that they're doing math. So, okay, well, we'll either put them in public school or, well, let's not do math at all. My kids know they have to do math. It's not my favorite thing to do in the life either, but it has to be done. Or that might be science or reading or writing for your kids, whatever it is. So sometimes it's not what we're asking them to learn or what we're asking them to do. It's how we ask them to do it. You might need to look at your child's learning style and decide maybe you need to look at a different kind of curriculum. It's not that I'm asking them to do math, but it's how I'm asking them to learn it. For example, I just recently found out in the past few years, my kids are extremely heavily visual learners. I did not realize that. I assumed because my kids are extremely chatty and extremely verbal that they were very verbal audio learners. They're not. And in fact, my oldest is like almost -0 on that chart when you kind of do that little testing thing. She's a 0 audio. So when I'm telling her things and I'm reading aloud to her and I'm doing audiobooks and I'm giving her instructions verbally for me, because that's how I learned, she really doesn't process audio very well. She is an extreme, almost off the charts visual learner. She has to be able to see it. So when I was doing all these lap books, and honestly, I just loved it because it was all crafty and artsy fartsy, and I loved that. And to me, that's what homeschooling is. You should be doing crafty and arts and fartsy and just, that's homeschooling. Well, for her, it didn't work. And she, probably about 3rd, 4th grade, she started asking for workbooks. She wanted workbooks. And I was like, why would you want to do workbooks? That's so public school. And we're homeschoolers. We don't have to do workbooks. But no, both my kids love workbooks. And I never knew why until I realized a year or two ago, that they're such visual learners that they need to be able to see it. They can't hear it. They have to be able to see it. And so when I realized this, and I realized my kids were like off the charts visual learners, everything I did homeschooling had to change. All these great ideas I had, and they were fabulous ideas, but my kids aren't audio learners. Everything had to change. I had to adapt all the curriculum I was using to be highly, highly visual. That's why we had to go to, stay with workbooks for some lessons, but we've got, I've had to go to a lot of video-based lessons. We've had to do a lot more kind of reading-based lessons. Anything that's more visual works for them. And I think you do want to test your kids periodically as they get older and as they mature to retest those. Are they a visual? Are they an audio or whatever, kinesthetic learners, whatever it is? Because I think as their brains mature, that learning style matures as well. Okay, so it might not be that you're just asking them to do math. It might be that their brain is frustrated because it's not learning the way you've asked them to learn. And so because we homeschool, well, we don't have to force them to kind of get along with the program like public schools do. We can change how we're asking them to learn to fit their learning style. Now, if you've gone through all of those, it's not physical, it's not educational, it's not their physical kind of mental age ability level capabilities. What we're left with in that fourth level is a heart character issue. One of the kind of questions I always ask myself is would this situation or this behavior really change that much if they were in public school? And frankly, in this particular situation, no. If this happened to me, guys, I'm not talking off my head here. When my oldest was kind of hitting that 12-year-old stage, the end of that school year, we had to do kind of Virginia required that kind of state standardized testing every year. So we go to do our standardized testing, and my child, who was always in the toppest stay 9 of these silly standardized testings, she has always scored the highest possible levels. She bombed in math. The whole math section was so bad, it was embarrassingly abysmal, off the charts, bombed it. For you to go from the ninth stay 9, which is the highest, down to the first or second, which is the lowest, in one school year, that doesn't make sense. Even with her kind of, going up a level in abilities and, kind of doing harder math or whatever, I can see maybe dropping one level, okay, because it was hard. But that much? No, there's something there. And I honestly, I didn't pick up on it. Now, why didn't I pick up on it? Because I was working in homeschooling and frankly, assuming my child was telling me the truth when she said she was doing her schoolwork. Okay. That's what really boils down to. Because when I went to go investigate, oh my gosh, what are we doing wrong? How could she be bombing math? What can I do? Okay. Again, all the things we ask as a homeschool mom, I went back and looked at her math and I was like, well, maybe there's certain skills that, she just didn't grasp that I need to redo with her. I need to work on. No, what I realized is that she decided this was stupid and math was lame and this was a complete waste of her time. And so she learned how to cheat her math. Even though our math is all computerized and computer-based, the computer only graded out of the problems she attempted. So if she attempted 5 problems and got all 5 right, well, she made 100. Okay. So it wasn't out of the 20 or so actual problems that were listed, which was my fault as a parent. I should have caught this much more quickly than I did. She figured out how to cheat and she knew that I was trusting her. And so she knew she could get away with it. Okay. So when you skip beyond, it wasn't that she couldn't do the math. It's that she didn't want to do the math. And it wasn't that she didn't want to do the math because it was hard or she couldn't do it or she didn't understand it. It was laziness. It was cheating. It was lying. It was character issues. Okay. So that's why I really like the Shepherding a Child's Heart, because it focuses on character. If this is a character issue, you're going to have that problem whether your kid is in public school or not. Okay. Doing your work halfway, and again, I'm cleaning up my language there, so you know what I'm trying to say. Doing something halfway is one of those things that, frankly, it's age appropriate, first of all. Every single middle schooler, every single preteen is going to go through this stage where they're going to do literally just enough to get by. And if they think they can get away with something, they absolutely will do it or not, depending on the situation. This is normal. Okay, that is an age appropriate issue to be handling. So I know that. But I also know it's a character issue. And this is a character building opportunity and moment for me. Because what do I want my kid to learn? I want my kid to learn integrity. I want my kid to learn honesty and the importance of integrity and honesty, so that she's not getting lied, she's not accepting someone lying and being untrue to her. But I also want her to learn work ethic. And it is extremely important, I think, for them to learn this at a very young age, because it's much harder to accept and learn when they're an adult. And I rather my child fail now in middle school and fail hard in middle school than in her high school years, where that class transcript is going to follow her around and it's going to affect how she gets into college and all of that. But also as an adult, to, if you do this in a real job as an adult, we all know you're going to get your hind end fired. Okay, you're going to lose your job. You're going to have a bad reputation. You're not going to have a reference to follow you with that job. And it's going to make getting your next job even harder. That's a massive, massive consequence. Okay, that could be financial consequences and so on and so on. No, I don't want my child to learn it at that age. I want her to learn it young. Frankly, let them fail. Let them fail when they're young. Let them learn the consequences of this when they were very, very young. So while I wouldn't have necessarily intentionally allowed my kid to fail math or cheat on math, especially, as I found out she had, I thought it was a very good time to kind of hone in on that situation and make sure she learned the consequences of failing math and not doing her ultimate best and not trying and not, frankly, trying to skim by. And so I basically said, okay, well, what would happen in public school if she pulled this stunt? Well, she'd flunk math. And if she flunked math, she'd probably have to do summer school. So that was our consequence. I was like, well, since you chose to slack off all year long, and you basically flunked math because of it, and I flat out told her, you flunked straight up. If you did this in public school, you would have failed and you would have been held back, or you'd have to go to summer school. So I'm choosing to put you in the homeschool version of summer school all summer long. So I went back, and every single problem she skipped, every single problem she missed that year, she had to redo all summer long. And then I added to it one of those standardized test books. She might have issues with just standardized testing. So I wanted to kind of throw that in the mix as well, just to kind of see if we could fix that problem. So we did that all summer long. And when her friends were free to go, her friends were inviting her to go to a water park or to go to the neighborhood pool or to do this activity and that activity, I'm like, I'm sorry, you decided to fail math. You decided to skip out on math all year long. Guess what happens now? You get to skip out on any fun activities that you could have taken the day off and done with your friends this summer because of this. So again, it's an if-then. If you do this, here's the consequence. And it should be a very logical, natural step. The natural age-appropriate issue is that your preteen is trying to assert their independence. And I will allow my kids, if they're going to act like mature, responsible kids, I'm going to treat them like mature, responsible kids. But the second they stop acting like mature, responsible kids, I'm not going to treat them that way because clearly they can't handle it. And I will actually tell them that, look, if you can't act like a mature, responsible kid, you don't get treated like a mature, responsible kid. If you're going to act like a small child, I will treat you like a small child. But as soon as you start acting like a mature, responsible kid, I'll treat you like a mature, responsible kid. And if I can't trust you, you don't get treated that way. Okay? So if then consequences, that's kind of how I think about it in my head. So for example, if their chores aren't complete and completely done to the quality and my satisfaction level, then they haven't been done at all and they get to do it all over again. And if they hate that they're having to spend that time doing that, well, they've lost the privilege of having that time as free time. If their schoolwork isn't done and done well, and I'm not saying good grades, guys, but I'm saying to the best of their ability and giving a full and complete 100% effort and their chores are up to date, then I don't get in the car because I'm not going to waste my time or my gas driving them around for privileges they haven't earned. And remember, electronics, internet, games, toys, or going anywhere, outside activities is all earned privileges. It is not a right. So, and I speak very calmly, even though inside I might be raging, even though inside I might want to frankly just, snatch their head off. So even though that might be happening on the inside, if I escalate, they will escalate, just like a toddler, guys, okay? So I have to almost push that down and de-escalate myself. And I speak very clearly. I speak very calmly. If this, then that. If this, then that. And it's very, very clear. And then I just lather, rinse, repeat. I don't change what I'm saying. I will literally just quote myself over and over and over because eventually it gets through. I will tell you my oldest is now 13. She's doing exceptionally well. And she learned that, okay, in 6th grade. She's now doing 8th grade work. But, between 6th and 7th grade, she learned that lesson and she learned it hard. I think we almost have to kind of remember they do not have fully formed mind and mental capability. We have to work with their heart. And time after time after time, guys, time after time after time of me being a parent for 13 years now, we've had a situation, and whenever I can frankly look beyond behavior and look at why and what's causing this behavior and focus on that, everything else eases up. Everything else fixes itself. And it's just worked for me so many times over and over and over. It's now my mantra. Really take a second and look beyond that to what might be happening beyond that so we can get to the heart of the issue, focus on the heart, and help them kind of learn that life heart lesson so they build the character, they build the heart and the life that we want for them. As we wrap up our episode today, I want to thank you all for listening in. There are a lot of great podcasts out there, but you chose to spend your time here with me, so thank you. Please be sure to check out the show notes for the links to my site, workingwhilehomeschooling.com, and all of the great ways you can reach out with us online. We do appreciate our listener supporters, so if you've enjoyed today's podcast, you too can support us with a small monthly donation that helps us continue with great content and interviews like you've heard here today on the Working While Homeschooling podcast. Please check out my show notes for the link and more information. We appreciate your online reviews, all of you that have been subscribing to our podcast. Thank you to those of you who have been sharing this with your homeschool friends. And if you know someone that you think would be a great guest on this podcast, please let me know at Julie@workingwhilehomeschooling.com. And be sure to join us in our Facebook group for continuing conversation on today's topic and beyond. I look forward to seeing each of you soon at the next podcast for Working While Homeschooling.